Following the U.S. Navy's forceful response to Houthi missile attacks in Yemen, a new wave of hostilities was unleashed against merchant ships. The actions of Iran's allied Houthi militias have impacted businesses and raised concerns among major powers since November. Simultaneously, Israel's protracted war against Palestinian Hamas militants in Gaza, now more than 3 months old, continues to escalate. In a gesture of solidarity with the Palestinians, the Houthis threatened to expand their attacks on U.S. ships in retaliation for recent U.S. and UK bombings of their facilities in Yemen. Despite responses from the United States and its allies, the Houthis persist in their attacks on ships in the Red Sea. As the U.S. National Security Council assesses the severity of these attacks, the Biden administration seeks to mitigate instability in the Middle East. However, continued attacks on merchant ships and U.S. forces by Iranian-backed militias are escalating regional tensions. A new Houthi attack on merchant ships took place hours after the United States intercepted missiles in Yemen. Despite efforts, the Zographia, a Greek ship, was hit by a missile in the Red Sea while en route from Vietnam to Israel. Although no injuries were reported, the incident highlights the increasing danger of the situation. This attack follows the U.S. military's destruction of weapons supplied by Iran to the Houthis last week. Tension in the region is intensifying, and the international community is observing the development of these events with growing concern. In the face of growing concern in the region, Japanese shipping operator Nippon Yusen Kaisha, NYK Line, has instructed its ships near the Red Sea to remain in safe waters and is evaluating possible route changes. This decision reflects the concern that prevails in the area. Meanwhile, Houthi military spokesman Yahya Sarria confirmed the attack on the Zographia with naval missiles, causing material damage and a fire in the ship's hold, which was quickly controlled by the brave crew. However, uncertainty persists, and the security of sea routes is becoming increasingly precarious. The strategic Red Sea, which connects the Indian Ocean to the Mediterranean Sea through the Suez Canal, is at the epicenter of growing geopolitical tension that impacts international maritime traffic. Given the instability in the region, various shipping companies have announced significant changes to their routes, choosing to detour around the Cape of Good Hope instead of crossing the Red Sea. The latest to join this decision is the British oil giant Shell, which has indefinitely suspended all its shipments through this strategic route. Despite repeated U.S. military strikes against Houthi targets in Yemen, U.S. officials say they are seeking to ease tensions in the Middle East. Jake Sullivan, the National Security Advisor, stated that they are not seeking a regional conflict and that, through deterrence and diplomacy, they are trying to stop the spread of the conflict, creating conditions for de-escalation. However, he acknowledged that much will depend on Iran's stance and its support for Houthi militants. In this complicated scenario, the international community is closely monitoring events, aware of the importance of maintaining stability in this crucial region. In a further effort to maintain control of the situation, the United States has recently reported the successful interception of 4 anti-ship ballistic missiles that posed an imminent threat to both the U.S. Navy and commercial vessels in the Red Sea. Despite these efforts, the Houthis persist in their attacks, hitting another merchant ship in the region. This fact underlines the group's firm determination to continue its hostile actions, defying U.S. containment measures. In a significant policy shift, President Joe Biden's administration plans to reinstate Houthi rebels on the U.S. list of terrorist organizations. This decision seeks to cut off their financing and weapons supply. It is worth noting that this measure reverses the decision made in 2021, when the previous administration, led by Donald Trump, removed the Houthis from 2 terrorist lists. This change in designation could have significant implications on the geopolitical scenario and the rebels' operations in the region. In recent days, the Houthis have carried out a series of attacks, including launching anti-ship cruise missiles at a U.S. Navy destroyer, an attack in the Gulf of Aden and another against a Maltese-flagged bulk carrier in the Red Sea. Despite U.S. and British bombing in response, the Houthis continue their hostile actions, defying deterrence measures and generating growing concern in the international community. Amid growing tension in the Middle East, the Houthis' recent actions have triggered a complex geopolitical scenario. Despite U.S. claims that the group's attacks are less sophisticated, the glowing endorsement of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, Iran's supreme leader, has added a layer of intrigue to the situation. Contrary to their threats directed toward ships linked to Israel, the Houthis have focused their attacks on targets that U.S. officials say largely lack any connection to Israel. John Kirby, representative of the National Security Council, has highlighted that recent attacks are smaller and less effective. However, he remains cautious about the claim that the coalition has had no impact. In this context, the Biden administration is striving to contain the escalation of the conflict between Israel and Hamas, seeking to prevent it from expanding regionally. Despite these efforts, continued attacks by the Houthis and Iranian-backed militias underscore growing instability in the region. Uncertainty prevails as regional and global actors try to decipher the implications of these developments on the delicate balance of the Middle East. In the current geopolitical scenario, Iran's involvement in recent events in the region is immersed in an intriguing blanket of speculation and growing concern. Although Iran declares its support for the Houthis, the true extent of its involvement in the planning and execution of the attacks remains shrouded in uncertainty. However, what is revealed is a narrative that is intertwined with independent actions carried out by Iran, adding complexity to the developing plot. In the theater of operations in Iraq, Iran has been identified as responsible for an attack against Israeli interests in the vicinity of the U.S. consulate. This incident, which has been attributed to the Israeli intelligence agency Mossad, introduces a new layer of tension to the already complex dynamics in the region, leaving analysts with more questions than answers. At the same time, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard has proudly announced the destruction of targets linked to the Islamic State in Syria through the use of ballistic missiles. This act highlights Iran's active participation in the fight against extremist groups in the region, although its motivations and possible repercussions raise questions about the escalation of hostilities on the vast geopolitical table. In an even more disturbing turn, the Pakistani government has reported an incident in which Iran allegedly attacked targets inside Pakistan, resulting in the tragic loss of 2 children and leaving 3 others injured. These targets were identified as bases of the militant group Jaish al-Adl, escalating regional tensions and triggering concerns about the possible expansion of the conflict beyond the immediate borders. In this intricate scenario, uncertainty persists regarding the specific role of Iran and the interconnection of the various events in the region. The situation demands careful attention and determined diplomacy to prevent a further escalation of hostilities and preserve stability in the Middle East. On this delicate geopolitical chessboard, every move can have global consequences.